I'm really emotional. I'm also really tired.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats. And maybe that's a weird takeaway.
Even more bad news for Disney's Snow White remake coming out next year.
I'm a narcissist.
There's another Snow White movie competing with it. It's called Snow White and the Evil Queen, and the producer promises to be more faithful to the spirit of the original animated classic.
Walt once said about Snow White, to me, I thought it was the perfect story. Unfortunately, the company Disney founded doesn't agree with their founder and visionary.
Once upon a time.
Who is that? I like the beginning.
In time, a prince would come. Once upon a time, but now that time
Brings me back to my childhood.
is gone.
No freaking way! No! Yo! Brett Cooper?
And that's me. I'm Snow White.
It's so over for Disney because the conservative media company Daily Wire is making their very own rendition of Snow White starring Brett Cooper. It's a Snow White showdown, y'all. And not just that, they're also launching a rival children's network called Bent Key. And whether or not you're excited by the prospect of watching entertainment produced by a conservative company, I have to commend Daily Wire for putting their money where their mouth is.
If you say you're bringing a modern edge to it on stage, what do you mean by that? I just mean that it's no longer 1937. We wrote a version of Snow White where she isn't waiting to be saved by the prince. She's saving herself.
Sometimes I wonder, though, how do they cast these people for those movies?
What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. Who here
thought they had permission to say anything critical?
You had one job. Just take the source material and just remake it. That's it, and you will win. Everybody's gonna go watch the movie.
Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro are doing their own live-action remake of Snow White with Brett Cooper as Snow White because she's like West End trained, right? So she's a very well trained, supposedly a very well trained actor who can sing. Apparently, it's like the triple threat: podcast, act, sing.
Right.
And they announced it the other week, and it's going to be coming out next year.
God, I hope they'd slay Disney.
Crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Why were you?
Are fans ditching Rachel Zegler's Snow White for Brett Cooper's version? Rachel's take on the classic fairy tale has sparked controversy, while Brett's portrayal is gaining major support. In this video, we'll break down the changes that have upset longtime fans and explore why audiences are rallying behind Brett's more traditional approach. From Rachel's bold updates to the story to Brett's return to the classic Snow White we all know, we'll dive into what's driving the divide. Don't miss out on this heated debate. Like and subscribe to Woke Informant for the latest updates.
Cool. I'm literally the one in that trailer, and I'm still like so excited, and I get chills.
There I am, Gary, there I am.
The whole thing is just so cool. The moment when the music starts to crescendo as I turn around, when I first heard the music, I was like, stop right there. That's just so.
Brett Cooper, a rising conservative star from the Daily Wire, has stepped into the role of Snow White, and the fallout has been nothing short of explosive. This casting change has sent shockwaves through social media, with fans fiercely divided over what is quickly becoming one of the most controversial remakes in Disney history.
Backlash surrounding the upcoming Disney live adaptation of Snow White. The market is primed for someone to step in and tell a proper Snow White story. The Daily Wire has picked up the ball and ran with it, releasing a teaser trailer for Snow White and the Evil Queen, which will release on their streaming service called Bent Key.
He wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Sounds great. Here's our Snow White.
By 2030, it's predicted that 45% of women will be unmarried and childless. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because we've been told that, men are trash and that our career is the only thing that matters and that marriage and children will inhibit that, which is unnatural. That is biologically unnatural for women.
That does sound.
Cooper, known for her unapologetic views and rejection of woke narratives, is stepping into a role many believed belonged to Rachel Zegler, who had her own controversial vision for the iconic princess. While Zegler pushed for a modernized Snow White, not
For the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave.
One without Prince Charming and centered on female empowerment. Many fans were outraged, seeing her interpretation not as a refreshing update, but as a complete betrayal of the timeless fairy tale they cherished. For generations, Snow White symbolized romance, innocence, and the magic of true love. The story had been passed down as a beloved classic, with its themes of fate, kindness, and happily ever after. Zegler's decision to remove the prince and transform Snow White into a self-reliant leader wasn't just a new direction. It was seen by many as an unnecessary rewriting of a tale they felt was already perfect. Adding fuel to the fire were Zegler's public statements, where she openly criticized the original narrative. She called the 1937 Snow White outdated, dismissing its portrayal of love and happily ever after as irrelevant in today's world. But perhaps her most controversial remark was labeling Prince Charming as a creepy stalker, a comment that further alienated longtime fans and intensified the backlash.
Focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that.
Casting the classic love interest in a sinister light was a move that few fans appreciated. These comments weren't seen as bold or empowering by much of the audience. Instead, they felt like a direct attack on the nostalgia and emotional connection people have to the original story. To many, this wasn't just a modern update. It was a complete dismantling of something sacred. Fans didn't view these changes as simple creative choices. They saw them as an unnecessary rejection of the fairy tale's timeless charm and the values it had represented for generations.
Snow White actress hating Snow White and like ripping on the 1937 original and so on and so forth and sort of mocking it. Look, you chose, that's the source material.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, you're going to play Snow White, and she's catching a lot of backlash for that. But when you do a movie of that size, the studio tells you what the messaging they want to be. Yeah. You don't just usually come up with it on your own, because if you do, and it isn't what the studio likes, they go, hey, listen, Terrence, we want to talk to you about the Snow White thing, because the stuff you're saying doesn't jive with what we're doing. Can we put there? Yeah. That's shocking to me, because why do you hate your source material so much? And if you really want to create something brand new, just create a new character. Just do something new. Just go ahead.
As the son of the director of the classic Snow White spoke out, my dad and Walt Disney would be turning in their graves over woke Snow White remake. Son of original film's director accuses Disney studio bosses of insulting the 1937 classic and destroying his father's creation. As you know, Rachel Zegler insulted the classic Snow White movie on several occasions in her interviews, calling it outdated when it comes to portraying women. According to her, the women in those movies wanted to be saved, and the new, modern version will have the Snow White focus on becoming the best leader.
Rachel Zegler's radical feminist diatribes are a massive turnoff and will likely be one of the very many reasons why Disney's live-action Snow White is going to be a massive flop. Her smug demeanor on the red carpet has drawn the ire of classic Disney fans who like the aspects of Snow White like true love and fantasy. They seek an escape from talk about feminism and politics and other realities. They want a fairy tale ending, not a cancel culture conscious cop-out. I never expected her to be a breadwinner or a girl boss. I wanted her to get saved by the prince, who, according to Zegler, was a creepy stalker all along.
Have you ever been to that Snow White ride at Disneyland?
I get stopped for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and it is I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how long?
Great to hear how much she appreciates the fans in her new movie, Snow White, which isn't even out yet.
I literally hate the movie. I think it's absolute garbage.
Are you talking about something else?
No, I'm talking about Snow White. The funny thing is, I only watched like 2 minutes of the cartoon 20 years ago, and I ended up taking a hammer and breaking my TV because I thought it was so awful.
So does she have a love interest in this movie?
Hell no! This is in 1937, and we're not in a Taylor Swift love song. There is no love story. She's an independent female lead. She ends up joining a pyramid scheme, and she becomes the world's biggest girl boss.
I'm Snow White, and I'm not some weak little princess. I'm a boss babe, and I'm here to overthrow
the evil queen.
The patriarchy, actually.
But Queen Grimhilda is a wicked witch.
Okay, that's offensive. Okay, those are rumors spread by insecure, toxic little men.
But she hired a huntsman to unalive you.
Iconic. She woke up today and chose violence. I love it.
Someday my prince will come.
For many fans, Snow White represents a simpler, more innocent time in storytelling. Zegler's desire to make it more politically correct or woke was seen as disrespectful to the original source material. It wasn't just about removing Prince Charming. It was about tampering with a beloved piece of cinematic history that, in their eyes, didn't need fixing at all.
Big news! Deadline reports the Daily Wire is making a live-action Snow White movie starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. Watch the teaser.
Ben Shapiro is apparently putting the white in Snow White because the Daily Wire is remaking the Disney classic Snow White, starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. The studio is said to be very excited about making this film with conservative values such as friendship, love, and unconsensual kissing.
Something I am curious on is how faithful they are to the original story.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not like campy or anything like that.
Yes. Something I find interesting, when you look at all the other Snow White live action.
Can't really say the same thing about Rachel Zegler. You know, it'd be one thing if Snow White turned around and put a MAGA hat on or some bullshit. That's not, people don't want propaganda on the other side. They just want propaganda-free entertainment.
It's Hollywood, baby.
And that really is the main point. We're not trying to turn Snow White into something that it's not. We're not trying to turn Snow White into a MAGA conservative movie. We're just trying to represent the values that Snow White is based in, the timeless values that we all loved growing up that are sadly being forgotten in this new adaptation.
And now this is competition, right? This is America. If you don't want to see the woke Disney film, you have every opportunity now to go see this Daily Wire film.
Variety is the spice of life. Choice is great. Some kids, parents, families, young women might prefer the Rachel Zegler version. Some might want to watch the more stereotypical prince and princess fantasy or whatever it is, and they can watch the original, or they can watch the Daily Wire version, or you can watch all of them and decide what you like best, and that's fine and good. I think it is worth commenting on that the Daily Wire is doing something that's very interesting in trying to specifically, instead of just complaining that mainstream pop culture and entertainment is hostile to conservative values.
Now, just like all of the other remakes that have basically involved some cultural changes. The Daily Wire didn't like the live-action remake for Snow White, which is starring a woman, an actress who's 22 years old. Her name's Rachel Zegler, and she is Colombian and Polish. She considers herself a white Latina, but I really think that some of the criticism toward her coming from conservatives isn't just about Snow White being cast by someone who doesn't have like translucent skin. I think it also has to do with some of the comments that she's made about the movie itself while she's out there talking about it. We'll get to that in just a moment. But nonetheless, the Daily Wire decided to provide their own version, their response, if you will, to the live action remake of the Snow White movie.
It's time for some shameless self-promotion with the Daily Wire. And I'm being honest when I say it's shameless because I was the most excited person about this. I want to get involved somehow. I'm not sure how. I keep pitching myself, but they just don't want me.
What is this movie all about? Like, what started it off? Where did you get the first idea for it? And what are you hoping to accomplish with this one?
So we got the idea for it literally the day that Rachel Zegler did an interview in which she said that she hated the original Snow White and wanted to rip the guts out of it.
Weird.
And then Disney released those ridiculous cast photos of dwarves that were not dwarves, the multiracial, multi-ethnic, tall people, and one dwarf. This is how we make decisions at the Daily Wire. I literally just emailed that to my business partner, Jeremy Boring, and I was like, we should do something like this. And Jeremy's like, okay, we're just going to make Snow White, but we're going to do it to all the specs, with music, with singing, with the original storyline in classic fashion that imbibes from the original well of the values. Specifically because if Disney wants to cede that field to us, we'd be fools not to take it. And we're kind of shocked by the fact that no other studio has done that. I mean, just on a pure market basis.
Wait a minute, that's not woke Snow White. Isn't that Brett Cooper from the Daily
Cooper? Her casting is being celebrated as a victory for those who believe Disney has taken modernization too far, rewriting its own history in the process. Unlike Rachel Zegler, who sought to distance Snow White from its traditional roots, Cooper has been vocal about preserving the classic elements of the fairy tale, especially the iconic prince and the happily ever after love story. This commitment to honoring the original narrative has resonated with fans who are growing tired of Hollywood's constant reimaginings of beloved stories. But Cooper's portrayal is more than just another casting choice. It's being seen as a bold statement. The Daily Wire, in casting her, isn't just selecting an actress. They're making it clear that they believe audiences still crave the timeless magic of the original, untouched by today's political trends. For many, this move feels like a direct rejection of the politically correct version Disney was pushing, a version that, in the eyes of some fans, strayed too far from the essence of the classic fairy tale. Fans who have long felt alienated by Hollywood's recent reworkings of traditional stories are rallying behind Cooper, viewing her as a breath of fresh air, someone who respects and values preserving stories as they were originally told. Her casting sends a clear message: not every beloved narrative needs to be reshaped to fit a modern agenda. It reassures audiences that there is still room for magic, romance, and happily ever afters without the need to pander to current cultural sensibilities. And the internet has responded. Social media is flooded with support for Cooper, with many claiming that her version of Snow White will be the real Snow White. Memes mocking Zegler's princess have gone viral, and hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite are trending. Meanwhile, critics accuse Disney of caving to identity politics, arguing that Cooper's casting signals a return to classic, untouched storytelling, something they believe Hollywood desperately needs. But this debate isn't just about who wears the iconic dress, it's a full-on cultural clash. On one side, you have fans who are done with Hollywood's woke reimaginings of their favorite stories. On the other, supporters of Zegler's progressive approach argue that fairy tales should evolve with the times. The battle lines have been drawn, and Snow White is now at the center of a much bigger war over what storytelling should look like in today's world. And there you have it, the Snow White controversy that has everyone talking. Are you Team Rachel Zegler and her bold modern twist? Or are you all in for Brett Cooper's return to the classic fairy tale? One thing's for sure, this battle is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the debate going. And hey, if you want to stay in the loop on all the latest Hollywood controversies and movie drama, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on the next big story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.